Welcome to Top 10 Beyond the Screen. I'm your host Johnny Rogers, and in today's video we'll be breaking down some of the best movies ever made, in our humble opinion of course. But before we get into that, if you don't want to miss another daily video from us, make sure you tap that subscribe button to join our notification squad. Plus, make sure you stay all the way until the end because you won't believe our number one spot. Now without any further delay, let's get right into today's list of the top 10 best movies of all time. In at number 10, Get Out. The directorial debut of comedian Jordan Peele was absolutely sensational. Not only was it different than what we were used to in terms of Mr. Peele, but it also brought something new to the horror and thriller genre as well. The performances from the cast were also hailed as chilling in this gem of a film. Get Out received praise for its direction and themes, and it was chosen at the 90th Academy Awards to be nominated for 4 awards including Best Picture. Jordan Peele ended up winning for Best Original Screenplay, and it also earned 5 nominations at the 23rd Critics' Choice Awards, 2 at the 75th Golden Globe Awards, and 2 at the 71st British Academy Film Awards. The film follows Chris, an African-American man who decides to visit his Caucasian girlfriend's parents during a weekend getaway. Although they seem normal at first, he is not prepared to experience the horrors that lie ahead. In at number 9, Pulp Fiction. Directed by Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction follows a series of incidents that intertwine the lives of 2 Los Angeles mobsters, a gangster's wife, a boxer, and 2 small-time criminals. The movie boasts groundbreaking direction and cinematography for the time, and Uma Thurman, John Travolta, and Samuel L. Jackson give extraordinary performances. Pulp Fiction is still widely considered to be the most influential American film of the 1990s. Although the name itself insists that there is no deeper meaning to it, it is one of the most prolific films that Tarantino ever released, and if you're making a best movies of all time list, this one should never be skipped. Its use of non-linear storytelling combined with a complex narrative around one man's redemption is sensational. In at number 8, American Psycho. This horror satire classic follows Patrick Bateman, a wealthy investment banker that is hiding his psychopathic ego from his friends. Although as the film progresses, you can see his illogical fantasies begin to escalate as he finally submits to his unquenchable thirst for blood. Christian Bale nails this role and delivers a terrifyingly chilling performance only eclipsed by the film's excessive violence. The publication Bloody Disgusting praised Bale for his disturbingly dark turn as the serial killer and Manhattan businessman. Even the New York Times referred to this film as a mean and lean horror comedy classic. The film is based on a book of the same name written by Bret Easton Ellis, but instead of leaning on the heavy material, the film cuts out all of the fat like some sort of cinematic liposuction. In at number 7, Gone with the Wind. Released in 1939 and clocking in at an astounding 4 hours, Gone with the Wind is still considered to this day as an American classic. The film follows a manipulative woman and a deceitful man that carry on a troublesome love affair in the American South during the Civil War era and into the country's Reconstruction. The craziest part was that they started with a budget of $3.85 million and the film ended up making over $390 million. When it was first released, it was the most popular film in history and became the highest earning film ever made up until that point. It won 8 Oscars, which meant that it cleaned up in nearly every category, scoring wins for both leading roles and even supporting roles, as well as Best Director, Screenplay, Cinematography, Direction, and Best Picture. But it's 4 hours long, so strap in. In at number 6, The Shawshank Redemption. Based on the 1982 Stephen King novel Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, it tells the story of Andy Dufresne, a successful banker that is arrested for the murder of his wife and her lover. He is then sentenced to life imprisonment at the Shawshank State Penitentiary, but despite his crimes and claims of innocence, he is still one of the most unconventional prisoners. Early on, he befriends fellow prisoner Ellis Redding, played by Morgan Freeman, who becomes instrumental to his escape. Many critics praised the film for its ability to convey the harsh realities of life in prison. In 2015, the film was selected by the United States Library of Congress to be preserved in the National Film Registry. They considered it to be culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant to the cinematic legacy of America. In at number 5, Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane was released in 1941 and is directed by Orson Welles. It follows the investigation of a publishing tycoon's dying words that reveal very conflicting accounts of his already scandalous life. It's hard to see it now, but at the time this film was revolutionary, especially considering it was Orson Welles' first feature-length film. It ended up winning an Academy Award for Best Writing and was once considered to be the greatest film ever made. Few movies at that time had been able to tell such a powerful narrative with original technique. This had a a giant impact on Hollywood and how films were made. Citizen Kane is a noir in style and tone, featuring storytelling devices and camera techniques that would heavily influence the genre for decades. In at number 4, Boyhood. After MJ's parents divorce, he and his sister Samantha live with their mother, whereas the father has visitation rights. The film follows the multiple incidents that occur across a period of 12 years that would end up molding MJ's life. The brilliance and genius of this film is that it was actually filmed over the course of 12 years. Filmed from 2001 to 2013, Boyhood shows the growth from childhood to adolescence. To accomplish this enormous task, the director planned to assemble his cast and crew for a few weeks once a year. Director Richard Linklater said that he had always wanted to tell the story of a parent-child relationship that follows a boy from the 1st to the 12th grade and ends with him going off to college. But the dilemma is that kids change so much, so it's impossible almost to cover that kind of ground. However, he was totally ready to adapt the story to whatever the actors were going through at that time. In at number 3, 12 Years a Slave. This biographical period piece was an adaptation of the 1853 slave memoir of the same name by Solomon Northup. It's about a man that was born a free African American in New York State before being kidnapped in Washington, D.C. and sold into slavery. He was then forced to work on plantations in the state of Louisiana for a total of 12 years. Not only was the film named one of the best movies of 2013, but it also won Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actress. The Boston Globe called it a work that finally asked a mainstream audience to confront the worst of what humanity can do to itself. It's definitely far from a comfortable passive viewing, but regardless should be considered as essential cinema viewing. A truly unflinching and brilliant window into American slavery. In at number 2, Parasite. This comedic thriller stunned audiences with its perfect depiction of greed and class discrimination. The film begins with such hopeful exhilaration, but a drastic turn ends with complete devastation. The director himself had also been a tutor for the son of a wealthy family throughout his 20s, which is where he drew his inspiration for the story of Parasite. The marketing team was hesitant at first, with fears of people assuming that the title was in reference to, well, the poorer family in the story. Although director Bong Joon-ho said that it could be viewed in the opposite fashion as well in terms of labor. The wealthy family can't do their own dishes and they can't even drive themselves. They heavily depend on other people to do their dirty work. Someone would call that a parasite as well. Overall though, incredible movie. You gotta watch it. Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, The Godfather. Released in 1972, this American crime film directed by Francis Ford Coppola was the first installment of what would become the Godfather trilogy. The movies are long, but they have become classics in the world of mafia cinema and filmmaking in general. It follows Don Vito Corleone, the head of a mafia family, who decides to hand over his empire to his youngest son, Michael. Unfortunately, this decision unintentionally puts the lives of his loved ones in grave danger. The film ended up securing 3 Oscars for Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Screenplay. More importantly, it serves as an excellent dramatization of Italian immigrant culture in New York City and the powerful crime families of the 1940s. And that has been the top 10 best movies of all time. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to our editors for all of your hard work. If you enjoyed this video, please show us some love here by tapping that like and subscribe button. Plus, don't forget to leave us your comments down below. And for more videos like this one, all you gotta do is tap that playlist when it pops up. From Top 10 Beyond the Screen, my name is Johnny Rogers. Thanks until next time, stay classy.